Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, double honors, seals and apostles, the great millstone, who are teaching this truth and sincerity. And a shout out to Yakims out there in four corners of the earth proclaim this truth. Brak of the Yahweh, Brak of the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, storm of the century, and they manufactured this. This is coming in, pretty much a lot of people without power, right? And that's all being done by design. As you know, the World Economic Forum, going on in Davos, may have already concluded, but great things are being spoken against the Most High by this Yavari guy, right? This Amalekite, speaking great things against the Most High, saying that AI could just control everything, right? Because we've already established, if you hadn't watched the previous video, right, that Esau's a fucking retard, that he needs AI to do everything for him because he can't think for himself, because he's too fucking stupid, man. He ain't got a brain in his fucking head. Well, these are these dumb butts that were walking around retarded, they were cavemen, right? Cave dwellers, because that's what Caucasian really means. These cave dwellers that didn't know shit from Shinola, man. These cavemen, right, they can't really think for themselves, so this AI just proves the point, that they need something to think for them. They need machines to think for them, right? It's kind of like when you watch the Superman movies, right? And it's hilarious because Zod, and his wife says they need machines to fly, and they were laughing at him, right? Because they could fly, right? Because they had superhuman powers. And that's another thing in itself, right? Because the angels have superhuman powers, but they also have vehicles to fly. But nonetheless, though, Esau needs machines. He's not smart enough. And guess who designed those machines? Think that the Edomites were smart enough to create it? No. They may have taken the credit for it, but it was Jake who created it. The computer was created by Jake. Though he never gets a credit for it, some Edomite took the fucking credit for it, right? Because Bill Gates is a fucking can't even form a sentence, right? Can't even fucking talk right? A four-eyed piece of shit, right? But if we do a really good job, doesn't even fucking talk right? But Christ tries to act like he's a genius and just sounds more and more like a retard. Well, no wonder why Yavari speaks so many great things against the Most High, right? Because they, in their so-called technology that's been built for them, because Jake built it, they think that they have surpassed the Most High, and in their minds either, right? And so they have this plan to get everybody merged with machines, right? To be implanted with a device to track their every move. And that's what it's really all about, is tracking everyone, like they do with pets. Because people think nothing about putting tracking devices inside their pets, and they don't even think that for 1 second, that this devil is tracking you through your pet. For those of you that refuse to take the implant, that they're going to track you through your pet. That's why they mandated that all pets that you receive have a chip inside of them, especially over there in the UK and certain states over here too. I know in bullshit Texas they fucking have certain laws there. And it's getting to a point though that you can't even adopt a pet that hasn't been micro-chipped. So we're seeing this. We're seeing this devil scheming, and coming up with plans. And they still are planning to attack Iran at the end of the day. Even though there's these ship killers that are out there that Iran actually has, they're still going to go through with their attack anyways. And like everything else, though, the new interim president of Venezuela is getting tired of Donald Trump's bullshit, so that's not going according to plan. A lot of things ain't going according to Esau's plan. He's getting exhausted. They're saying that Donald Trump is having a lot of heart problems, etc., and that he really is, because, of course, his plans ain't going through. Last year, they tried to have insurrections. They really wanted to bring in the Insurrection Act, and he's really been trying with this Minneapolis thing, but people just ain't buying it. And even the National Guard thing, it's starting to fall apart, it's starting to crumble apart. But he's really trying. He's really trying to come up with a false flag. So you got the storm of the century that happened, right? People without power. Now, people without power and, aid not getting to them, etc., that could cause people to riot. Yeah, you could have riots among that. But we'll just see, though. I mean, if they're freezing to death and dying and people are losing loved ones and all that, we'll just see how that goes. This could be the storm of the century. That's what the weather report was telling you before the storm even hit. Now that it's hitting, people are without power because it's the storm of the century. Sounds like a Stephen King movie. I think it was. But nonetheless, though, unlike any that we've seen before, they always got to exaggerate and make it even bigger than what it is. That, well, there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do to stop it, And FEMA ain't going to be able to get there in time, right? So this could be the event, but I'm just thinking it's just a series of events. Oh, and don't forget, the government shutdown is approaching. See, I think it's just a combination of disasters waiting to happen. A set of false flags, not just one false flag, but many. But this is what's coming from a veteran. Even a veteran is looking at what's going on, as you measure the times diligently in and of itself, which we do. We constantly looking at videos, and people, insiders, to find out what's going on, because we know that, this devil's coming to an end, and like everything else, though, he's going to go out with great violence, because that's how this place was so-called conquered. It wasn't really conquered. It was pretty much invaded, just like they invaded in Venezuela, just like they invaded everything else, right? And they removed landmarks. They kicked out the indigenous people, but he has the audacity to say that those coming over here seeking refuge, asylum seekers, right? That they're illegal when everything this devil's done has been illegal. You're not supposed to remove landmarks. But, hey, he is the lawless one. Nonetheless, though, this is from an insider about what's about to take place, a harbinger, if you will. So a harbinger of things to come.
So what do I think they're going to do in 2026? I do think they're going to take a shot at a Reichstag movement. A lot of people were looking for this in 2025. I was as well, where they could use a false flag, Putin-esque attempt at a attack on American soil to consolidate control and bring in the military, bring in the National Guard, and all those things. And that never really happened. They tried to push it a little bit with Charlie Kirk and stuff. And,
yeah, the Captain Kirk thing fell apart.
Anti-fascist, which never made sense, and they're still trying to figure that out. But they tried to, like they did some test cases. They wanted to have more control over the National Guard, and that has kind of, basically shut down for them, except in D.C., where he has more control. But now you see the National Guard deployments being pulled back from the Democrat cities. They still have troops in red states where the governors are more than willing to do whatever Trump wants. That's in New Orleans and then as well as Memphis. But it didn't go the way they planned on that. There are things that they are looking at in 2026 with this rapid deployment response force for the National Guard. That we're supposed to create, I believe it was 300 individuals per. There's already a rapid response team for each National Guard for emergency situations.
So, with that, though, bringing in National Guard, just like they did with ISIS, because ISIS is one of those militant groups as well. ISIS just opening fire and shooting people, for no reason whatsoever, or just, doctoring up the tapes, to make it look like to get people to rebel, even though that's falling apart too. But nonetheless, though, ISIS doing what they do, their terror attacks, even that's falling apart. So they have to come up with something. Well, I believe it's going to be a series of things, right? So bring in the National Guard, of course, because Minneapolis is on fire. It's on fucking fire. So they got to bring in the National Guard. And then you watch, they'll stage some sort of event where fucking National Guard gets shot, and then they have to bring in the military, a full-blown military, to lock down the cities. I believe that's what's coming next, is somebody's going to open fire on the National Guard, and he's going to bring in even heavier troop bombardments, because like everything else, though, they have to lock it all down. And not to mention, with the approaching government shutdown, which they're not going to be able to avert it. It's looking like another shutdown, and he's going to cut off more programs. And you watch, if he starts cutting off Section 8 and more EBT and even SSI or other welfare programs, and those all get shut down, yeah, you could probably see a lot more violence on the streets. Because when you cut off people's main source, because they got everybody used to a universal basic income, all hell will break loose. So I believe that's what they want. It's all hell to break loose as he's getting ready for his next attack against Iran. Because the Israeli state was pushing for a much larger attack a larger scale attack, because a couple weeks ago he was supposed to attack Iran, but they said, no, don't do it yet, just yet. We want to get in a larger scale attack, because they were, they hired Daesh terrorists that they've been bringing in from Syria to Iraq, to Iran to attack. Because Iraq is even going along with the U.S. and say that, oh yeah, we're going to bring these ISIS terrorists to justice. Well, hey, the Syrian government just freed ISIS. Yeah, this false narrative that these SDF-held areas was holding ISIS, but well, they were all set free because they did their job. They did their job, so now they've been set free. They become part of the Syrians' new interim government. And so, like everything else, the Kurds got screwed once again by Babylon the Great. Pays to be a friend of Babylon the Great. It's even worse to be a friend of Babylon the Great than it is to be an enemy. At least as an enemy, you know where they stand. Like when Donald Trump says, we have the oil and we're keeping the oil. Bashar al-Assad even said it best. He says, well, at least that's an enemy you know. Instead of trying to pretend that you care about humanitarian causes when you don't give two shits about it, right? You can't even run the country, but he's going to tell everybody else how to run theirs. And his ambitions for Greenland and Canada. Now all of a sudden Alberta wants to become a 51st state. Yeah, how did that all happen? We all know that these are engineered insurrections, and like everything else, so, he's just having a harder time getting it done, but he will eventually start to get things done. But the Most High is going to speed things up for the elect's sake. But, we're still in that grace period, right? There's still time to repent, but, the time will come where we won't be out here doing this, when martial law comes and, there's curfews and just pretty much lockdowns everywhere. We won't be able to do that, Not to mention, they want to take total control over the internet because this internet's been hurting Esau. It's been hurting their narrative. Their narrative is falling apart. People are calling bullshit. People can tell that, wait a minute, this is total fucking bullshit. That doesn't even fucking make any fucking sense whatsoever. That, okay, for one, you can't tape ISIS to begin with, unless they want you to tape them, right? What happens when you try to film a police officer, right? Turn that fucking camera off. You're not even going to get close. You're not going to even be able to upload it. They will have already seized your camera. So this is all being staged. Everybody knows that. And they're calling it out. So he's having a hard time getting that new world order going. Just like he was a laughing stock at the World Economic Forum. As, that his ambitions for Greenland, was kind of thwarted by the rest. Because the EU, well, they're not going along with it, his ambitions for Greenland, that would drive NATO apart. But that's what he wants. He says, he took it a step further when he said, well, let's put NATO to the test, because Trump has already said that they don't need NATO. You see, Revelation is speaking, that these shall hate the whore and burn her with fire. And that ultimate fire is talking about nuclear destruction because these warheads are ready, Even France says, hey, we need some sort of equal like Reznik missiles for ourselves. And Macron's getting tired of Trump as well. So, you got all these things taking place at the same time, and they don't even need to declare a ceasefire in Ukraine. Even though Trump already said that, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to declare a ceasefire, that I can get the Ukraine war to end real soon. And he hasn't done anything. He ain't going to do nothing. He told you in the first term that he was going to repeal Obamacare. Yeah, you can see how well that did. All these dumb fucks, cheering him on. Oh, yeah, let's build the wall. He didn't do shit for you. But you went and re-selected him anyways because you fought into the bullshit. I mean, people are just fucking retarded. Oh, wait. We were just going into how retarded he is, right? That people can't think for themselves. They say that they planned all these things. No, they just talk to chatbot. They talk to AI. They can't even answer the fucking phone anymore and give you direction. They have AI answer the phones for them. That's how fucking stupid they are. They don't know shit. You try to go to an auto parts store and ask them if you have this or that, There's very few educated people anymore. Because why? Again, when you kick out the workforce, when you deport the workforce, aka ISIS kicks out the workforce, what do you got? A bunch of dumb fucks running everything, right? So it's no wonder why this shit show of everything is just falling apart right and left. And they can't tell. They're too dumbfounded. They think that, or the other half is so dumbfounded they think that the Democrats are going to actually save them, right? It doesn't matter which side you vote for because voting never counted to begin with. They don't count the votes, they never have. And protesting, that doesn't do you any good. Since when has protesting ever done shit? They still going to go forward with the war. Gaza's still fucking destroyed, you know. What good does protesting do? It doesn't really do anything. Yeah, go on strike, go protest, you know. See what that does, you know. It just means that, okay, well, your ass didn't get paid because you went out there and protested, or you pretty much, your ass is through. You know, you didn't get anything. Nothing has been resolved. You know, you're dealing with the government that oppresses people, right? You know, most people don't even know what the government means, you know. Government means that they rule over you. Your rulers don't care about you. They never did, you know. But nonetheless, though, you know, we have been awakened as to what's going on, you know. And that's how we stand on our watchtower, seeing what the Most High shall speak to us. And what shall we answer? What answer will we give when we shall be reproved, right? You know, well, you see, we're seeing part of the science past, which we've been told before, and we're seeing it come to play out, you know. So like everything else, though, you know, we're staying prayed up, you know, making sure a call for election is short, you know, because, hey, you know, things are going to be picking up, you know, as you can tell, you know, we're getting near the end of Esau, Edom, and the beginning of ours, you know, the house of David has been built up, you know, and it's very knowledgeable who the Israelites are. These gutter rats going around and calling themselves Jewish are not the real ones, you know, that they're liars. They're found out to be liars, right? That the only people that really are, you know, pretty much abstaining from peace is the Israeli state, Levant. You know, the Israeli state is the whole reason why West Asia is falling apart. You know, if the West wasn't in West Asia, then they would actually have peace over there. But there can never be peace as long as the Israeli state exists. As long as the West, you know, the U.S. and its allies are there, which the U.S. only has the Israeli state. See, a lot of these other places are starting to break away from Babylon, especially over this Greenland thing. But a lot of them ain't going along with the Gaza new plan either, which they announced over at the World Economic Forum, right? They had a new plan for Gaza. Looks like Trump towers everywhere, right? You know? And pretty much it means the elimination of all Palestinians. Yeah, that went over very well there. And then you had Yavari talking about how AI is going to replace everything. So, you know, they want to merge humans with machines, right? And they're speaking great things against the Most High. You know, that pretty much, though, AI is the new God. You know, because Esau has declared himself to be God, to be like God, you know. And pretty much, though, you know, we know that once, you know, the cup has been filled, you know, to pay unto her double, you know, because Babylon the Great had been the hammer of the whole earth. And so we're seeing all these nations getting together, getting ready to fight Babylon the Great, you know. And like everything else, though, a lot of defenses are also being moved into motion, right? They're ready for this attack against Iran. And make no mistake about it, the retaliation is going to be even greater, you know, than it ever was before. So we might see some ships sunk over this, you know, because I do believe he's probably going to do it, because these Israelis, these Amalekites, are not going to give up, you know. And we know it starts World War III, you know, when they go into Damascus and then they try to launch sorties against Iran from there using Damascus. Damascus comes completely destroyed, starting a nuclear war, you know. And we ain't too far away from that. And yet, they also want to merge humans with machines. You see that pretty much, though, that they have, you know, want a cashless society, and they want everything to be in those chips. You know, they want everybody to be micro-chip, to be implanted. And that's coming, you know, via the new system that they have in place, but they have to get rid of the old system first. So they have to destroy so-called democracy, right? They have to destroy Babylon the Great from within, and you can see it being destroyed from within. You know, when martial law is being declared, you see, that's what we believe, is that a series of events is going to take place. You know, there ain't going to just be one event, it's going to be several events all over the place. You know, martial law being declared, and pretty much the old system crumbling down, then them announcing the New World Order. Because even Biden said it in his first, in 2014, before he was even the president, he said that the old world order has to go and that we need a new world order. George Bush talked about the new world order. You know, and the old world order is when the U.S. used to control everything, but they need a new world order, and everybody's fighting for that new world order, and that's what World War III is really being fought about, is who gets their place in World War III. Then the Most High and the angels are going to thwart that plan. We go over this time and time again. That's what all our videos are about, you know, and we all speak in one accord. That is, you know, the elect of us speak in one accord. No, we're not united with all the other camps that might tell you that the mark of the beast is something else. You know, when we clearly see that it's a microchip, you know, that everybody's going to be implanted with it, you know, and you're not going to be able to buy or sell without it, you know. You know, nothing else, you know, takes away your ability to be able to buy or sell. You could be Muslim, you could be a Catholic, you could be, you know, a atheist. Yeah, you don't even have to have a religion, you know. And you can still buy and sell. So that's not it. That's not what it is. And it definitely ain't sleeping with the so-called Edomite woman either. You know, but all these other false teachers, they tell you that. But then again, you know, this is the year of apostasy and of great sellouts, right? So we're going to see even more apostates, you know, coming out, you know, trying to send your direction somewhere else, saying that we don't know what we're talking about, right? You know? Like vocab, you know, he tries to come up against us, but you know, he only looks more and more foolish every time he tries to do it, because counterfeit Christianity hasn't been able to be proven true yet. You know, that you know, we've taken that down quite a lot. You know, because you know, it doesn't even make any sense that God loves everybody, but He's going to send you know, those that don't know Him straight to hell. You know, where they burn forever. That doesn't even make sense. But that's what they teach. You know. And that you're once saved, always saved, doesn't even make a whole lot of sense. That's already contradictory, but it's so far away. But pretty much, though, the ones that He's going to save is the elect of the nation of Israel. He doesn't give a shit about the other 18 nations, you know, which, by the way, there's only 18 nations in the world, you know, and then you have descendants of each of those nations, and that's your whole table of nations. But He's only dealing with one nation. And that's the 12 tribes of Israel, which you can see the sign over there, you know. So like everything else, though, we've been awakened as to who we are, you know. And we go out here and we proclaim this truth, you know, knowing that we're the Israelites, the real Israelites, you know. And, you know, then the end shall come, right? When it's been declared across the four corners of the earth, and we believe that it has. You know, that's why prophecy's been picking up, you know. Is there 144,000 in the Great Millstone? No. But is there 144,000 out there that know this truth? We believe so. And we believe, like everything else, so we're all going to be gathered together very soon. You know? And it's going to be a perfect number, because the Most High has already said that all of these words will come to pass. You know? That all prophecy will come to pass. Now, do we know the exact year and time? No. We just call it the hopeful year. That's usually what we call everything, right? This year is just called the year of apostasy, right? And of sellouts. So, like everything else, though, we're going to see a lot more pick up, you know. And Donald Trump has already declared that he's going to have a third and fourth term, you know. That he's going to be president for life. He said in his own way, you know. And like everything else, though, you know, pretty much, though, we believe him to be the last Trump. The last Trump. I mean, think about the name, though, you know. America takes the Donald for everything that it has. You know, he's bankrupting the country. I mean, that's just it. The Rothschilds bailed him out years ago because he bankrupted everything. So they placed him in the perfect area, right? To bankrupt this, because the only way the old world order could die, where the U.S. dollar is no longer the dominance, you would have to kill it. Well, what better way than raising tariffs and fucking off all your allies? We believe he's where he is because the Most High placed him there. And we believe him to be Nero, you know. So, like everything else, though, we're going to see a whole lot more. And hopefully, this has been edifying, you know. Pretty much so. The storm of the century is happening, and we're going to see a lot more great despair. Even more despair is coming, because if you hadn't guessed, we're already in Jacob's trouble. It's just going to pick up a lot more from now. Everything's about to intensify, and then the end shall come. World War III, after they mandate the mark of the beast. And that will be mandated, you know. They're going to get that through all these other things that they have in place to cause the system to collapse. So we see what's coming, and we told you before. So if you go and get it, you know, it's on you. we warned you not to take it. So hopefully all this has been edifying. For that I want to say Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Wa Abab Babal. Brakatum, Jehovah elect. And don't fall for these sellouts or these apostates. You know, if you're part of the elect, you won't. Shalom.